Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, return to the fray. A month after losing his job as Chief of Defence Staff amidst coup concerns, Nigerian General Christopher Musa returns to government as the country's Minister of Defence. Also, a well-known South African radio presenter is accused of recruiting young men to join the Russian army amidst mounting concerns across the board about influential figures rounding up potential soldiers to fight on the Kremlin's behalf. Also, as global obesity numbers creep up, the WHO releases new regulations for Ozempic-like treatments for GLP-1 drugs. We speak to one of the board members for the World Obesity Federation about what this means for the African battle against obesity and its impacts. But first, Nigeria's former top military commanders have been brought back into the fold as the country's new Minister of Defence. General Christopher Musa was sacked as the Chief of Defence Staff just in October. But as President Bola Tinubu scrambles to respond to a wave of mass kidnappings, he's chosen a familiar face to head up the management of a myriad of security troubles. Our Clem Vala breaks down the landscape for us.
Lacing up his boots, Makailu Amin prepares for another day of dangerous work. He is part of a volunteer force that fights against armed bandits who target communities and abduct school children across Nigeria's Niger state. A job he knows, in which he risks his life on a daily basis, but one he sees as crucial.
I'm not scared because even you go out, go out, you do your house, anything will happen for you, And we already put our mind for this work. This thing, we are helping ourselves, we are helping our sisters and brothers in our communities.
Makailu is one of the more than 50,000 volunteer security personnel operating across Niger State's 25 local government areas as part of the Joint Non-Convention Security Groups, a coalition of 15 volunteer organizations formed in August of last year. The coalition was formed in response to a surge in bandit and insurgent attacks and a lack of police presence in rural areas in the north of Nigeria.
If you look at the soft target of the banditry in Niger State today, is within the deep rural areas where we don't have the police formation, we don't have the military formation, but of course we do have the local vigilantes volunteering themselves.
Volunteer security groups have joined forces with the army and the police to search for the remaining students and staff who were abducted from a Catholic school in Papiri on the 21st of November. 50 students later escaped and returned to their families, but hundreds remain in captivity.
Well, less than a week after the military seized power and suspended the entire electoral process, Guinea Bissau's National Electoral Commission has spoken out about its experience for the first time. Regional bloc ECOWAS, opposition parties and civil society have been calling for the results of November's presidential poll, but neither presidential nor legislative tallies have been released. Officials say that's because they've been stolen by soldiers during the military takeover on the 26th.
In addition to stealing personal belongings, cell phones, laptops, wallets, and money, the attackers completely vandalized the National Election Commission facilities. Documents, desktop computers, ancillary equipment, and the minutes that were on site. The original vote counting minutes were taken away. In conclusion, we reaffirmed to the ECOWAS mission that it was completely impossible to finalize the electoral process of November 23, 2025, and therefore impossible to announce the provisional results.
Well, a well-known South African radio presenter has been accused of recruiting young men to join the Russian army. Concern about influential figures helping to identify potential soldiers on the Kremlin's behalf has been of increasing concern in some quarters in South Africa. Our Eunice Masson breaks it down for us.
Circumstances surrounding South African men being recruited to fight with Russian forces have indeed grew more complex over the last few days. 5 suspects appeared in court on charges in connection with the recruitment. Now, this court case was postponed to next week, Monday, for the accused to apply for bail. One of the accused is a person whose voice is well known to many people in the country. Nonkululeko Mantula is a host at South Africa's National Broadcasting Corporation's radio station, and she's also an award-winning journalist who co-chaired the BRICS Journalists Association. And while these arrests were taking place last week, former President Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambutla, resigned as a member of parliament following similar allegations against her involvement in recruiting men to fight in Russia. Now, although both cases involve the recruitment of men to Russia, the police said it is investigating 2 separate cases. And at this stage, there is no indication that Sambutla and the 5 accused were working together. What we do understand is that in the case where Sambutla's involvement is alleged, the men were misled into thinking they will receive training as bodyguards. In the other matter, it seems the men were aware, they knew that they are going to fight with Russian forces. In any case, under the South African law, it is illegal for citizens to join or support a foreign armed forces without government approval. Now, in terms of the investigations, according to authorities, it is coordinating intelligence locally and abroad to determine the full extent of the network and any other potential security threats.
Eunice Masson there giving us a bit of a breakdown of that rather complex situation. Well, now we look at global obesity numbers, which are creeping up across the board, and Africa is no exception. As rates rocket up, the continent's projected to have double the number of obese children by 2050 as the numbers stand today. Well, this week, the World Health Organization added treatments relying on GLP-1 medications like Ozempic to its essential medications list. Now, what that means in terms of managing diabetes is very important, but there were also recommendations for its use in tackling obesity. And for more on what this means for Africa, I'm joined now by Stephen Ogweno, who works with the World Obesity Federation. Stephen, thanks so much for the time that you've given to break this all down for us. Now, first of all, let's work out the landscape. How big a concern is obesity for Africa at the moment? And what are the factors affecting the challenges on that front?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on this. And I want to start by saying obesity is a big challenge on the continent. We see that there is 1 in every 3 adults in South Africa, for example, and in Seychelles, for example, are already living with obesity. And the numbers are projected to rise. As you just mentioned, it's rising already from 8 to 12%, and we are seeing the rise to be continuing over time. And Africa is unique because we are facing a double burden. We have undernutrition, but at the same time, we have overnutrition, which is obesity, which is on the rise. And why this is a concern is because it is driving non-communicable diseases. Obesity is a tsunami for diseases like hypertension, heart diseases, and other complications like diabetes as well. And this is why it is now one of the biggest challenges we are currently facing on the continent.
So when it comes to the WHO's policy changes over Ozempic and other GLP-1 treatments, were African considerations part of the negotiations and the thinking that went into the decision-making process? And what do the guidelines specifically mean for the continent?
Yeah, so when these guidelines were being developed, African voices and African considerations were very much part and parcel of these guidelines and its development. And in fact, an African from South Africa was part of the co-chair who was co-chairing the guidelines development group at the World Organization for this policy that just came the other day. And by the World Health Organization having this obesity medication as part of the essential medical list, this is really a policy signal. This is a policy signal that shows that obesity is in fact a biological disease and not just a failure of willpower, but also a policy signal that is geared towards governments beginning to think of questions of access and equity. And again, I continue to say it's a policy signal and not an immediate supply drop. The fact that now it's part of the essentials list just means that it gives the civil society's power to advocate to their governments to start prioritizing this medication. It gives government power to start negotiating for bulk procurement and negotiate prices, potentially bringing them down. It also means that governments can start fast-tracking generics, which is also a component of access.
Stephen, we don't have much time, but guidelines are one thing. Reality and application is another. In a continent where we have so many challenges on the healthcare landscape, be it tackling, long-term problems like malaria to dealing with the immediate fallout of health impacts of conflict. Do you really see that the prioritization of making access to GLP-1 drugs will really be implemented in a way that makes any kind of impact?
Yes and no. So yes, in the fact that this is the first big step, the fact that we now have this medication approved and part of the essential list. The next step is essentially now is going to be really convincing the ministries of finance on the continent that by addressing obesity now, we save a lot more money in that goes into addressing all of the other complications that come with it, all the heart surgeries, the diabetes treatment, and the long-term medication.
Thank you.
Ideally, we have a challenge now, but at the same time, we are looking at doing the next step, which is advocating from the government standpoint to increase this access.
Thank you so much, Stephen Ogweno, there speaking to us about the work being done by the World Obesity Federation. Well, finally, we turn to Libya, which sadly has very few master saddlers left. The skills needed are falling to the wayside, but equestrian festivals spotlighting the cultural identity and skills of everything from the riders to those who support them are essential to keeping an interest in the ancient knowledge alive. Take a look.
In this workshop located in the Medina of Tripoli, Brahim Swaydan crafts traditional saddlery by hand, a passion passed down from generation to generation, but now threatened by several factors, including the cost of raw materials and the prices of the finished products. A traditional saddle and accessories can cost between $3,500 and $10,000.
The raw materials are all imported. It's not like before when everything was available locally. We had a large factory for leather and silk and facilities that imported silver and silk sourced from around the country.
Another issue is the loss of skills over time, such as silver weaving and accessories.
Techniques for working with silver and silk have practically fallen into disuse. We remain committed to this style, but I don't think many people still work with silver.
In Libya, as in many North African countries, there is a strong passion for the equestrian arts, as they are closely linked to history and traditions. At the Zliten Equestrian Festival, the craftsmanship of saddlery and the accessories that adorn the horses' bodies are celebrated.
This festival is not just a celebration, but a message to the entire world. We remain committed to our values, our principles, our heritage, and our Libyan identity.
A passion put to the test by political instability in the country, but one that endures despite adversity.
Well, that's it for Eye on Africa, but thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.